Among the staunchest advocates of expansionism was Matthew Culbreth Perry, a career Navy man. Perry recommended that the United States take active measures to secure a number of ports in the Pacific where they could refuel their coal-burning steamships. The island nation of Japan seemed ideal. There was one major problem. Japan had been closed to foreigners for over 200 years. In the summer of 1853, loaded with cannon, Commodore Matthew Perry's flotilla sailed into Edo Harbor, the gateway to Japan's imperial city. In a rosewood box wrapped in silk, Perry delivered a letter from President Fillmore asking the Japanese to open trade, to give fair treatment to shipwrecked sailors, and allow the U.S. the opportunity to refuel in Japanese ports. Along with the president's letter, Perry sent a cautionary one of his own.
Many of the large ships of war destined to visit Japan have not yet arrived in these seas, though they are hourly expected.
Perry's expedition wintered on the China coast, then returned in February with 8 heavily armed battleships. The threat of force proved to be enough to persuade the Japanese. On March 31, 1854, a treaty was signed that granted Fillmore's requests, opening the ports of Japan for trade with the U.S. Matthew Perry's gunboat diplomacy sounded a wake-up call for Japan, spurring them to strengthen their navy and modernize their nation. While the acquisition of Alaska was a cordial affair, other expansionist yearnings proved more troubling. Such was the case in Hawaii. In the early 1800s, missionaries from New England made the arduous journey to Hawaii to spread Christianity. They misinterpreted the Hawaiian culture, believing that living in a paradise had kept the Hawaiians from progressing.
Instead of grasping all he can get, he divides with his neighbor and confidently expects his neighbor to divide with him.
While the native Hawaiians were content to live in their traditional ways, a growing influx of Americans was busily building huge plantations, railways, docks, and hotels. They soon dominated the island's economy and made their influence felt in government. In January 1891, Hawaii's native king Kalakaua died, and his sister Liliuokalani ascended to the throne. Although she was educated in the U.S., she rallied against U.S. rule. Hawaii for Hawaiians. In 1893, American plantation owners plotted a revolt with the help of U.S. Ambassador John L. Stevens. When the U.S. battleship Boston arrived, Queen Liliuokalani saw that resistance was hopeless and sadly surrendered her throne. The Americans assembled their own government, with Sanford B. Dole as the president. U.S. Ambassador John L. Stevens reported to Washington.
The Hawaiian pear is now fully ripe, and this is the golden hour for the United States to pluck it.
President Grover Cleveland, however, opposed the annexation of a sovereign nation and tried in vain to restore Liliuokalani to the throne. After William McKinley became president, Hawaii was annexed in 1898. As the 20th century opened, China was in turmoil. Corruption was widespread. Opium addiction was endemic. Rebellion, drought, and famine claimed the lives of 60 million Chinese. Foreign nations had divvied up the empire into spheres of influence, areas where one country had exclusive rights to trade, invest, and had special political rights. With a coaling base in the Philippines just 400 miles from China, American businesses hoped to take advantage of China's vast resources and sell to her vast market. John Hay, then U.S. Secretary of State, had a brilliant idea. He sent letters to all the foreign powers suggesting an open-door policy in China. This policy would help U.S. businesses by guaranteeing equal trading rights for all, preventing one nation from discriminating against another. At the same time, the open-door policy maintained the territorial integrity of China an idea that appealed to anti-imperialists at home. Other powers politely put Hay off, saying that while an open-door policy is a good idea in principle, they had no way of enforcing it. However, Hay, despite the debate, boldly announced that everyone had agreed to the policy. Everyone, that is, except China. Cixi, Empress Dowager of the Qing dynasty, was eager to rid her empire of these foreigners. In northern Shandong province, a secret society known as the Fists of Righteous Harmony attracted thousands of followers. They, too, wanted to rid China of foreign influences, but they also sought to throw off the yoke of the corrupt Chinese government. Foreigners called members of this society boxers because they practiced martial arts. Boxers believed that through meditation and discipline, they could cloak themselves in a mystical shield, so foreign bullets could not harm them. The Empress welcomed the boxers as China's defenders and turned their fury squarely against the foreign community. In June 1900, the boxers began their bloody campaign. They murdered hundreds of foreign missionaries and Chinese Christian converts, destroying millions of dollars worth of property. About 900 foreigners blockaded themselves in their embassies for nearly 2 months, repelling waves of boxers.
Ammunition, food, and medical supplies were almost gone. Then shortly before dawn, loud explosions rocked the city. Weary defenders staggered to the barricades expecting a final, overpowering boxer attack.
But instead, relief had arrived. Troops from Britain, France, Germany, Japan, and the U.S. fought their way into Peking to free their countrymen and put down the rebellion. The boxers, believing they were impervious to bullets, were cut down by the thousands. On September 7, 1901, China and 11 other nations signed the Boxer Protocol, snuffing out the rebellion.